Most entrepreneurs think growth comes from doing more. Naren Arulrajah won by doing less. Instead of trying to serve everyone, he picked a niche, dentists, and went all in. Not just as a marketer, but as an educator, publisher, and trusted voice in that world. He realized something most businesses miss. If you want to dominate a market, don't just sell to your ideal clients. Build the platform they learn from. Build the events they attend. Build the media they consume. Build the community they trust. That's exactly what he did. What started as a marketing company became something much bigger, a niche education and media ecosystem for dentists. And that focus helped him build a business with 300 employees, hundreds of clients, and the kind of moat generalist agencies can't touch. This is the story of how specializing, teaching, and owning attention built a real empire.
I like the idea of unfair advantage, or they call it moat in business. Disney was some business model that I really was inspired by. They are very good at like taking one idea and making it bigger and bigger and bigger. And then what happens is if anyone tries to compete with them, you can't. Nobody has the theme parks. Nobody has the TV networks like ABC and so forth that Disney owns. Nobody has the Disney Plus. So it becomes impossible for you to compete with Disney. Hey, I'm so glad to be here, Jay. Thank you for the invite. Really looking forward to our conversation today.
Yeah, appreciate it. So can you start us a little bit about your background?
Yes, I'm a serial entrepreneur. I'm 50. I turned 50 last year. My story starts as a programmer. I studied computer science in Chicago. I went to University of Illinois Institute of Technology and quickly moved up the chain. And I got fired 4 times in a row. I was, the director of product management. And I'm dating myself. This is back in 2000 or 2001 was the last time I got fired. So I realized I am not meant to work for other people. I'm just not good at politics, not good at, playing the corporate game. So I ended up going on my own. I was forced to do it and have been, the founder of Equa since 2007. So the first 5 years as an entrepreneur, I was making mistakes, doing all the wrong things. And finally, I think I figured out the magic formula, so to speak. And then, of course, never look back. So now we have a 300-person company. We are very big in the healthcare space. We have multiple things going on. Our core business being Equa Marketing. We do lots of other things, but Equa Marketing is my core business that I spend 78% of my time.
And did Equa start from the beginning targeting the SEO space, or you started something else and then you found your niche in the SEO space?
That's a great question. So when I was struggling between 2001 to 2007, I was doing all kinds of things. And one of those things I did was a website for moms called Busy Moms, BIZYMOMS. And it was like for work at home moms, go think about, 2001, right? Internet was pretty new and, like a lot of companies were still like just getting started. So we got really good at SEO, and then the US economy crashed around 2007. And when it happened, the business that was barely surviving, Busy Moms, died. Nobody wanted to advertise with a small website with 200,000 visitors a month when they could advertise with Google. So I'm sure you all know Google became huge after that. And, a lot of the tech companies today, Apple, Google, they all became significantly bigger after that. But all the little players who were competing with them died. So we were good at SEO. That's how we drove traffic to Busy Moms. So a dentist in Chicago said, hey, can you help me? Because you are so good at, ranking for keywords, that across the world, in number 1, number 2, number 3, number 4 position. So if you can do that for some huge keywords like work from home, work at home, that are very, very competitive, you can easily beat out everyone in Chicago and help me dominate Chicago when it comes to SEO. So he was our first client. And then, of course, I focused on making him successful. A lot of people are focused on growing their business. I said, okay, let me do the opposite of what I've been doing up until that point and just focus my time and energy on making our clients successful. So really building out all the pieces of the puzzle, working on the engineering, really, really focusing on helping others get what they want. And that became the mantra that changed my life. Till then, I was me. And after that, I'm how do I help other people get what they want? So I use our engineering skills, our capacity to dream to do interesting things for our clients.
That's awesome. And did you end up niching down into the dentistry from day one, or you went wide and then you went back to dentistry?
That's a great question. So we took running our own website with the help of SEO to helping one dentist dominate Chicago. I realized, in my experience, prior to Equa, we were selling products for a couple of $100. And I realized it takes the same amount of energy to sell something for $200 or $20,000. So I wanted a recurring business because I hated sales. So one thing I realized is if we can do a good job for this one client in Chicago, he'll keep paying us month after month as long as we're able to continue that. So it became a very good business model that kind of catered to my sense of not wanting to be a salesperson and building something that adds 10 times the value for our clients. So I think it was an accident, if I may. Like I don't know how come I didn't ask the question, why don't I help somebody else? But I just realized for some crazy reason, like the more deeper you go, the better you get at something. So the way you convince someone to, sign up or join a dental practice, for cosmetic or for regular dentistry is very different from, let's say financial services or any other kind of business. So I just realized intuitively maybe that it's a good idea for me to get good at this. And it's such a big market. We have 100,000, plus dentists. So there's a lot more opportunity there. And the other thing I also realized is now it's easier for me to say this now looking back 19 years later is that it's so hard to break into healthcare. But once you break in and you're really strong, unless you really mess up, it's so hard for your competition to, take you out. So in our business, it's really about adding, producing results. So the average marketing company would have a tenure of 12 to 18 months with a dentist or a doctor. We have, 15 years, 14 years, and so 90% retention rate. So that became my mantra and my focus. Like, how do I make sure my clients never leave us? So that means adding more and more and more value every year without increasing fees. And really, realized it's not even about SEO anymore. It's about new patients. So SEO is just a piece of the puzzle, like the website, the social media, the way the phone is being handled. Like, so we started looking at all the gaps in the opportunity and then fixing it or filling it.
Okay, it makes sense. And you said 100,000. That's how many clients do you have?
So we currently have, so we are into many things. So our core business is Equa Marketing, and we have around 500 doctors we work with. Most of them happen to be dentists, around 80% of them. And then the other 20% are in aesthetics. So for example, dermatology, plastic surgery, med spas. We also have a few veterinarians and, other types of doctors, but like we don't have as many as we do in those two spaces, aesthetics and dentistry. Now we have Doctors' Choice Awards, which has around 10,000 doctors. It's a platform where doctors rate each other. We have communities like Dental Marketing Society or Veterinary Business Institute, Business of Aesthetics. So we have like in those communities, tens of thousands of doctors. We have Facebook groups, we have podcasts, we have, events we do virtually. Literally, we run around 200 events a year, all virtual events. And we have like partnerships with 400 plus people in this space. So we are into many things, but core business still is Equa Marketing. But as a serial entrepreneur, I like to do other things. So as long as it's helping our community, which is our doctors, I'm all in.
And that's incredible. That scaffolding of events and communities and podcasts and so forth is very fascinating. So let's kind of like tell us a little bit about kind of how that came about. How did you kind of start putting these pieces together? And then if you were to build it from scratch, how would you build it?
Yeah, I mean, I like the idea of unfair advantage, or they call it moat in business. Disney was some business model that I really was inspired by. Like, for example, they would make a character for a movie, right? Let's say, like Cinderella, right? Now, from that, they would have multiple movies, multiple TV shows. They would create merchandise from it. They would create, theme park characters from it. Even like in some of these things, they might even turn it into a ride. So they are very good at like taking one idea and making it bigger and bigger and bigger. And then what happens is, if anyone tries to compete with them, you can't. Nobody has the theme parks. Nobody has the TV networks like ABC and so forth that Disney owns. Nobody has the Disney Plus. Like, so it becomes impossible for you to compete with Disney. So if you built an interesting franchise like George Lucas's film business, you can't monetize it or make the most out of it the way Disney can with the Star Wars characters, right? So that's the way I thought about business. I wanted to make sure that everything do made like 1 + 1 = 3. Because if you're just playing the same old game that everybody else is playing, you are just competing on price. You have to play something totally different. I hate competition. I hate, just cheaper, cheaper, cheaper. I really focused on like, how do we add value? If you can add value and solve problems, then like, you don't have to watch what the competition is doing. You can keep innovating and doing interesting things.
Makes sense. So tell us a little bit about how those pieces kind of work together. So you have a community, you have like a platform where doctors rate each other. So how do those pieces kind of flow and work with each other right now?
Yeah, I mean, so the reason we started the community is we needed a way to get new clients, and we noticed, like, even though we do SEO, the clients we find through SEO are the wrong kind of clients. They're looking for like $50 SEO versus our premium SEO that's all about results and outcomes. So I realized I need to find other ways to get clients. Yes, we get referrals, but a lot of clients see other doctors as competition, so they don't want to refer, even though they might refer you to a consultant or a different kind of a vendor. But when it comes to marketing companies, the fact that we are doing such a good job, they're afraid of losing it, so they don't want to refer. So it created this kind of an interesting dynamic. We do get referrals, but usually it's like 1,000 miles away, not
Yeah.
like like people they know and they
Yeah.
work with. And also we are so niche, so of course, even if they wanted us to refer to a restaurant, we can't. Like, we only work with doctors. So what ended up happening is I had a brain surgery in 2007, and till 2018, sorry, till that point, I was doing it all. So running the whole thing, and I was not good at the day-to-day operations piece. I was good at the creative piece. So because I was doing it all, we didn't really focus on our own marketing. So we are kind of growing like this, like kind of flat for 2 to 3 years. And then this brain surgery happened. So I ended up delegating my day-to-day running of the business, like the services component, to another person. And that freed up my time. Yeah, eventually the brain surgery and its impact on my brain kind of subsided, and I was back to normal, and it took a while, but after a few months I was back to normal. So I started realizing, what do I do with my time? And I realized, getting on a plane and going to an event was dying. It's just too much, too expensive. Especially the younger doctors didn't want to do it. Like, even if they went, they might go for an event once every 2 years. So it was really, really hard to use that medium to grow your business. So I'm like, why don't we get good at virtual? So podcast, so I ended up partnering with somebody and got involved with one podcast, and then ended up creating our own podcast. And then we are like, okay, if we can do podcasts, why don't we do events? And we started creating these communities and started doing events. And then we realized there are so many other experts. Let's say, we want to, in dentistry, let's say real estate, right? How do you negotiate your lease? There are people who do that, and they do really, really well. So there's so many experts who are really good at certain pieces, but they didn't have the marketing muscle to reach their clients either. So we partnered with them, and we kind of did all the work. We did the CE, the organizing, the promotion, everything else. They just shared it with their audiences. So it's like all of us together are stronger than all of us alone. So that's how the whole thing got started. And being a creative person, I just kept moving forward. My question always is, what's the cost? What's the like what if we do it, and if we fail, what happens? If it works, what happens? And then if the cost is not that, it's not going to kill our business, I'm all in. So that's kind of the way I have played this. And then, of course, now things are changing. We have an AI component to our business. So I want to build a incubator that's about taking AI and offering solutions to doctors. And given we have so much influence in the communities, like, we have tens of thousands of doctors who listen to something we do on a regular basis, like, we can easily talk to them about trying something else. So we are still focused on Equa, the marketing company, but we also want to, realize that we are in a very unique moment where a lot of things that software used to do or humans used to do now can be done by AI. Or fundamentally, the way I look at it is, if something used to cost $300 or $500, perhaps now we can offer it for $100. So it can totally cut the cost. So I like innovating. I'm 50 and my kids are all grown up. One is 23 and one is 19. they're doing their own thing. So I just need something to do. So it kind of keeps me engaged. And also, I love seeing people grow. So we have an awesome group of leaders that I work with who are always like, my goal is to help them dream and do big things.
That's awesome.
Like, because,
So,
we all are going to die one day and we don't take anything with us. So just might as well do something productive. I feel like God gave me the talent to imagine and dream and create, but he didn't give me lots of other talents, or he did not. So I try to use the talent he gave me.
yeah, makes sense. So let's double click on the AI piece. So I'm going to do first on the impact of AI on SEO, and then we'll go into kind of like the use cases within the dentistry practice. So let's talk about the SEO piece. So how is AI impacting the SEO space?
Yeah, I mean, the way I look at it is, let me talk about the fundamental thing that AI is doing. So we all kind of on the same page. I think everyone was afraid of AI replacing the low end jobs, like, cashier or bus driver or whatever. But AI ended up replacing the high end jobs. Like it started with the programmer. So fundamentally, what it's doing, I mean, artificial intelligence, nobody knows how it works. I mean, I studied computer science, so I kind of understand the science and how these large language models work. But at a nutshell, what AI is able to do is it's able to learn on its own. I mean, the classic story, if you watch that documentary on DeepMind, which is one of the first AI companies, is just it learned Go on its own, and 2 days later it beat the world champion. So like nobody even had to teach it. So that ability to learn on your own and then master it to a point where you're better than the best, that was the unique thing about AI. So you give it computer science, programming, etc. Right? So what AI is doing is it's fundamentally threatening every white collar job. Anything that's not regulated, where the government says thou shalt see a human being for this, AI can do it. So if, I mean, human nature, right? If somebody can do it cheaper, faster, we'll go with the cheaper, faster option. Now, so that's kind of the big picture, right? So a lot of the programming and a lot of things that we thought was like the hardest things to do, AI is very good at it. So and as you put more parameters and build bigger models, it gets even better at it. So a company builds a model for 1 billion and they're like, oh, why not build for 4 billion? What can it do? And it keeps going more and more. And of course, the cost of compute is coming down. So again, the quality gets better and better. And the other thing is it's learning in parallel. So if 10 million people are using Claude, then of course, Claude is now getting the brains and smarts of all those 10 million people and trying to do things for them. Now, when it comes to SEO, pretty much the good news is there's one player who calls the shots, that's Google. And Google's market cap went from 2 trillion to 4 trillion today. Outside of NVIDIA, it's the most valuable company on the planet. Again, they have their own AI play and they make so much money from ads. So Google has this interest of keeping SEO really hard, because think about it. If SEO became easy and anybody can figure out how to do SEO, nobody's going to pay money to Google for ads. So what they do is they need SEO. It's kind of like, imagine selling Super Bowl ads without a Super Bowl. Nobody will watch Super Bowl ads if there's no Super Bowl. Same way, Google can sell ads if there's no Google that people want to use. So Google is in this chicken and egg problem, like a catch-22. So Google has to make SEO really hard. So only like 2-3% of the population gets benefit from it. While that lure of, just like the Super Bowl, right? 20 people are playing when like so many people are watching. So they make it so hard to get into that 20, but by making it so hard, that's how they build the value of it, right? So Google makes it really hard for you to rank. So of course, the minute AI can quote unquote beat Google, that means Google's stock price would drop. Nobody would buy Google ads. So it's in their interest to keep it hard. So of course they use things like human content and all kinds of rules to kind of keep people guessing and changing and whatnot. And Google is still doing a good job. I mean, every year their revenue keeps going up. So nobody is able to crack the Google SEO nut. So I think we are protected by it. Of course, Google prefers humans doing real work as opposed to, machines doing the work. So I think, we don't have to be, we just have to be the best in the SEO world for doctors. And that's what we are focused on. As long as we can provide better outcomes at a lower price in terms of new patients and whatnot for our clients, we are safe. The other thing that I think AI has done is people no longer want work, they want outcomes. So I think this is a golden age for entrepreneurs who are willing to create outcomes.
Yeah, so let's go back to the SEO piece. So there's a lot more traffic going to the ChatGPTs and Perplexity and so forth, and there are a lot of queries happening there as opposed to happening on the Google box. How do entrepreneurs and business owners take advantage of that? Because I know a number of business owners who have either acquired or own like older domains and have done the work in the past to have good content and good SEO, and they're seeing a lot more organic traffic coming from the LLMs than ever before. So how can people take advantage of that opportunity while the LLMs haven't put in ads yet? They haven't started monetizing that traffic yet.
Yeah, it's a great question. And because I'm in the space, I pay a lot of close attention and I look at the data. So we, focus on helping doctors dominate Chicago or a local town, right? Because doctors are local. So when it comes to pure numbers, Google is 100 times bigger than all these other guys. What I mean is, like, for example, let's take ChatGPT or OpenAI. I think they are around 800 million weekly users. That's the metric they share. Google search is used like 12 billion times a day. You know what I mean? So Google has cracked the nut of simple things. In other words, I want a dentist. How do I do this? How do I do that? So when it comes to simple queries,
Yeah.
Google is the beast at it, right? And last year alone, Google's traffic grew 15%. So for example, when you are 12 billion and it goes 15%, that's 1.8 billion. So it's very hard for a startup to catch up to Google, the behemoth. I mean, that's why,
But from a behavior perspective, and I mean, I'll push a little bit again on that. From a behavior perspective, there are two different types of like queries. And obviously, if you're talking about international, it's different than national. Obviously, the use case of LLMs, the use of LLM in the US is going to be much higher. People are using their subscriptions to 3 different LLMs. And when people are looking for something for the first time, let's say they're looking for a doctor today, a lot of people are going to their favorite LLM, whether it's ChatGPT or Claude or Grok, and asking that question, hey, who's the best dentist? Who pediatric dentist who has good reviews and who has XYZ service in this neighborhood or in this county or this or this city. And they're doing some queries that sometimes like they're hard to do on Google, where most people, they'll do the search on Google and then they'll go read the reviews, and maybe they'll go Yelp and read the reviews and then try to find additional information based on their situation, and then come back and call maybe through Google. But that process of research to finding that dentist now can be done with an LLM. So my suspicion is there's a lot more traffic and it's growing much faster than the search on Google.
Yeah, so I'm going to give you a very complex answer, but I'm going to make different points. Our position as a company is we don't want to ignore ChatGPT, Gemini, Perplexity. So we rank on all of them. So we get our clients to rank on everything. But what I'm saying is, in the ground, Google is so good at local. Like, I'll give you a classic example where LLMs are great. So yeah. I have an accountant. He's an accountant that offers cloud accounting services and done for you, very tech heavy. So if you go to ChatGPT and ask, hey, I'm a business of, X size, I'm a tech company and I'm looking for a cloud accountant, boom, they come up. Yeah. So if you are a national company, even though the volume of LLM is small, even though it's only 1% of Google in terms of actual usage, if you count, number of times people are typing searches, Google is 100 times bigger. But because you are a national company, for you, it makes a massive difference, right? And he doesn't need 1,000 clients. He needs like 10 clients a year. So if LLMs can send 5, man, that changes his life. Like, that's like 50% of his growth. So I think in that national brand, I think even though LLMs are tiny, I think it's starting to become very useful. Like, it's a very unique case, right? I'm a tech company and, I'm looking for a cloud accountant, very unique niche. So they get a lot of benefit from it. When it comes to doctors and stuff, the challenge is information changes so rapid, and these other guys don't have the infrastructure Google has. Google has like tens of millions of servers, and they have information getting updated on a daily basis. I mean, this is not too long ago. I went to Ireland, I used Grok and I used ChatGPT, and they literally said in the trip planning, say, go to this restaurant. Restaurant doesn't exist. It has been gone. They just don't update the data. They just don't have you have to understand, Google is revenue is $400 billion. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
400 billion, and 250 billion is just from ads. Just to put it on perspective, that's bigger than 150 countries' GDP. All these other guys are borrowing money, like, OpenAI. They're losing $3 for every dollar they make.
Yeah.
So they can't compete with Google when it comes to local, because you have to, like, imagine you send me to a wrong restaurant in Ireland. I don't care. I'm on a vacation. I don't, like, no big deal. I'm not using that for trip planning anymore, at least when it comes to specific recommendations. So, like, I think people remember these things. I know even today when I look at anecdotal evidence, yes, to find that accounting firm, I think LLM might play a small role, but I really think, given how deep and wide Google is, I mean, they own Google Reviews, they own Google Maps, they own Google Calendar. They have like put like a mesh, like it's like a octopus with like 17 claws, like grabbing at you, right? They own
Yes.
Google Photos. So it's just, I think on the consumer side, I think it's Google to beat. Like, I don't think anybody can beat Google on the consumer side. I think this is because I've been paying a lot of attention. I think on the enterprise side, I think Anthropic will do well. And I think OpenAI is just fumbling. It's doing everything and nothing really well. They're not like excellent at anything, in my opinion. And I think and Google dominates. I mean, Gemini, right? I mean, Nano Banana, their models are like winning all kinds of awards. And you have to understand, Google has incorporated AI into Google itself. Like, you go to Google search, you get AI results
Yeah.
billion times a day.
Yeah. So how is that affecting? Because how is that affecting the? I know a lot of the pay-per-click guys are complaining because the amount of traffic is going down, and so their cost per click, their cost per acquisition has gone
Going
up.
up.
Yeah. So how is that affecting the whole space?
I think it's an excellent question. I think we want it to be the best in the world. So when you are in the best in the world and you can get your clients in the top 2% or 3%, you are playing a game that is so different. It's kind of like training Tiger Woods, when he was 20 years old. Like, imagine you are the coach for Tiger Woods. Now, it's a very unique game. You can't train 1,000 people. It's very limited because it's very intense. But so we tend to benefit from it. Like, literally, our clients' traffic has doubled after AI came along, because Google is using the same thinking and the mindset for AI search as it's using for regular search. So what we are finding is, like, we have clients who are ranking for 600 keywords on top 10 results of Google, 500 keywords. So as long as, like, it's almost like, it's kind of like when 2007 happened, right? The strong companies got bigger, like Apple. Like, you look at Apple's size, Apple, Google, and Tesla, like in 2007 versus now, right? They just got 10, 20 times bigger. What everybody else gets killed. I think, unfortunately, like most people in SEO, they don't go that deep and try to be the best in the world at it. Like, we have 300 people like doing all kinds of stuff to maintain that best in the world. So I do think we found it very beneficial. Like, our clients are doing exceptionally well, but the average people who are just a little bit of this, little bit of that, they're struggling. And you're right, Google is making even more money because cost of acquisition has gone up and they don't have any other choice. Like, either Google or they don't eat, kind of, thing. So
Yeah.
Google's revenue is up literally by 15% last year. Like, I mean, literally they're making more money from ads today than they ever did. And every year it keeps going up, up, up. So I think it's a great time to be alive if you're Google. And I think it's a great time if you are really, really good at what you do. If you're not good at what you do, I think this is not a good time.
Yeah. Yeah. And I mean, Google has the advantage of having so much data on the search side, on the map side, on the YouTube. And so they just have the data. And so they have the ability to capture that demand that's out there. So in terms of like automation, and let's talk about a dentistry. Let's say, for example, a typical dentist, because I can think of a dentist very similar to any other business, whether it's roofing or HVAC or anything. It's they're local businesses, local service businesses that want to capture customers and they want to keep them. They want to keep them coming back. And they want to build a reputation in the marketplace so they can get referrals and they can get good recommendations. So it's the same process, applies across all local businesses. And so in terms of AI automation, what are the use cases that you've seen that actually work, and what are the use cases that are kind of like almost there?
Yeah, I think I saw that chart that Anthropic put out. I think we talked about it the other day, which is like what percentage of a job can AI do today? Like
Yeah.
programming, it's 96%, right? Like there's literally nothing that it can't do that world-class programmer can do. So I think I think my take is because they tackle programming first, because the minute you can make programming faster, then you can use that ability to do more programs to make everything else faster. So I think eventually all knowledge work, AI will be able to do it as well as humans. So I think it's going to come down to comfort and knowledge, and like there's two use cases here. One is we consume more, we do things that we don't even think of today, and all of a sudden our GDP grows, like because humans are consuming more. I think that's kind of hard because we kind of have a lot of stuff already. I don't know, I could be wrong. So one optimistic case is our GDP is 10 times bigger, and therefore we are doing 10 times as much, even though AI is doing 90%. Humans are still busy doing the other 10%. So that's one optimistic case. But I'm not that optimistic we are going to 10 times our GDP, at least. Like, I don't think it's going to come from human consumption. Maybe, who knows? But I think humans, I don't think are going to consume 10 times more. So the other alternative with AI is what happens, like, for example, Facebook is going to supposedly looking at firing 20% of its employees. We already know Square that fired, 4,000, half of its employees. I think it's called Block now. It used to be called Square. It's a billing, a payment company like PayPal, very big. And their argument is we don't need these people because AI can do it all, right? So now the person who was making $200,000 at Facebook, Square, it's going to be hard for him to get a similar job. So of course he's going to go to a smaller home, so it's going to put some downward pressure on lots of stuff. And I think it'll have some trickling effect in terms of housing prices and asset values. I don't know. I mean, I'm not really qualified to talk about it. This is just my common sense talking.
Yeah.
But I do think, in like anything else, I think those who lean in will do well, and those who don't will suffer.
So I have like a completely opposite view. Like we talked about it last time.
Yes.
But I wanted to really know more about the use case. So within the dentistry office, with the services, so what are some of the things that, like you say, you would recommend a good client of yours to, you go back to the Chicago example, what would you tell them to implement right now? Things are like technology that's ready to go today that they can apply within their practice.
Yeah, so I think one area where we see a lot of traction is in treatment planning. So AI is good at looking at data like X-rays and whatnot and saying, hey, these are the three things you should recommend to the client. Just like anything else in life, you get the good use case and the bad use case. The good use case is AI wants to justify value, which means it'll give you more things to fix, even though some of those things it's suggesting you fix are not as important. So a lot of times, it could create the opposite effect. Too much treatment planning going on and people get disillusioned and they don't believe anything. So that could be one negative side. And of course, the same AI is used by insurance companies to reject claims, So like you see this is the thing, right? Great technology, but humans will try to use it to get their own self-interest from it, right? And of course, then it backfires. So, but I know today for treatment planning, AI is being used heavily. Like, Overjet is one of the CEOs who I had on one of our events and, in one of our podcasts. Pretty smart young lady from MIT, pretty brilliant, of course. Just like everybody else wanting to make $1 billion, building a company, nothing wrong with that. I mean, that's what everyone.
And the treatment planning, is that a model that goes inside of the operating tool that the practitioners use, or is it a whole operating tool from scratch? This AI, imagined?
Yeah. So, I mean, pretty much it's just looking at the data and recommending, here are the three things you need to fix. So instead of the doctor looking at the data and saying, here are the three things, AI now tells them, of course, the doctor has to verify it. Yeah. But after a while, we don't check it, right? We trust the AI. We think it's God. And so I see that's an example where it's actively being used, even like 3D modeling and printing and stuff like that. So I think long term, you will get doctors creating their own solutions versus something coming from a lab 3,000 miles away or 50 miles away. In terms of phone like answering phone calls, I've seen people try AI, but I think it has not worked for lots of technical reasons, and also humans trust.
Why is that? Because that's a big use case. It
is a big use case. I think healthcare is very personal and very near and dear to people's heart. So I think the trust is still important. Like, for example, if I'm calling a credit card company because I had an issue with my payment, yeah, maybe AI can do it. I mean, like, what are you going to jump up and down? You're not going to cancel your credit card because AI, spoke to you, right? So I think there are some use cases people will be more forgiving, where they'll be like, okay, I don't care that it's AI doing it. But I think when it comes to healthcare, I think it has failed, at least in my experience. Like every person I have spoken to who have tried it, they're like literally, we even have patients calling that particular office saying, am I talking to a human? That's the first question they ask, because they don't want to talk to an AI. It's just,
But
they
what
want.
are the questions that they're having a problem with? Because if I'm calling a dentist and I get an AI to pick up right away, and I can make an appointment in the day that I want to make an appointment, I don't have a problem.
Yeah,
Are
see,
these different issues that like a more
this is a great,
specific?
yeah,
Yeah,
this is a great question. See, healthcare, because it's kind of like every situation is unique. It's kind of like,
right.
like if I come to you, like if you're a financial planner and I ask you to plan my finances, like depending on each person and what they want, and how much money they have and all kinds of stuff, the answer is
Correct.
going to be totally different. Same thing
Yes.
with healthcare. So there's a lot of nuances to it, and AI is not able to pick that up and build that rapport and a relationship. It's very tactical, it's very mechanical. It's not like, and also people don't trust AI. I think that's a huge issue. Put yourself in a shoes, right? You have $10 million, you're going to a financial planner. Will you trust a machine, knowing that it could mess up, or would you trust a human who has been doing it for 30 years and everybody else knows him? And you know
Right.
what I mean? The trust is a huge issue, especially in healthcare. So I think, and I think technology, the people who implemented got too greedy and too aggressive, like we talked about, and it blows up in their face. And then once it blows up in their face, they're like, I'm never touching this with a 10-foot pole. So I think part of it is that, I think, I mean, we are seeing this already. Like people think AI can, like, it's like an easy way to make money, and then of course they overestimate what it's going to do without doing the proper thinking and planning and executing. Now, Overjet is an example of a company, I think, that is doing a decent job, even though the use cases could be exaggerated and people might use it the wrong way. At least the company is trying to really build real good tech. So there are few companies, like maybe a handful, that are in my mind doing a decent job in like doing it properly, and going slow when they have to and figuring things out when they have to, versus just putting it out there. So I think one area where I think it is very powerful is note taking. I have talked to doctors in all kinds of healthcare settings, and they love it. It's able to start take notes, even write a letter to the referring doctor, so they don't have to like write it, and even like simple things like explaining something. So I have a good friend I go for walks with. He's a lung specialist. His wife is the head of anesthesiology at one of the largest hospitals in Canada. And he says, sometimes he doesn't know how to explain something without hurting the feeling of a patient. So he will tell AI to say it. So it'll say it in a very, very nice way. So there's a lot of cases like that. He even said, he went to Bahamas and he came down with some kind of a, some kind of an infection that was giving him headaches and whatnot, and it was in his nose. And then he started talking to AI, and it helped guide him, like, okay, this could be what's going on, so tell your doctor when you go see him. So there are cases like that where,
So the doctor is coaching the AI is coaching the doctor on how to have a
yeah, like on
conversation
how
with
to go
his
and
own doctor.
yeah,
That's
exactly. When he
awesome.
goes to see the doctor, it's coaching him what to say. Like,
I love that.
because remember, these guys have 5 minutes and they already have a preconditioned mind on what it could be. Like, oh, take
Yes.
this antibiotic. Oh, like they just don't even try to figure out. They just, so it's like, so it's coaching him on how to not get him go down that path and like lead him to the right direction. And as a doctor, he knows whether he's making sense and whether it's saying the right thing, and like, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Versus consumers, we have no idea. So like we could be led the wrong way. So, it's kind of interesting.
That's
Yeah.
interesting. That's fascinating. There's this thing about the proverbial left ear doctor, and the more specialized doctors get, the more they prescribe that specialty.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
so you end up
Yeah.
you end up
And he said it right. They're biased. They already assume they know what the problem is by the time you walk in.
yes.
And
Yeah.
that bias drives a lot of their thinking and
Judgment.
recommendations. Yeah.
Yeah.
And that's why sometimes it takes 4 tries before they actually find out what's really going
And
on.
it is the scary thing, which is really interesting, is that that doctor who's very specialized, let's say in a specific procedure or whatever, they have
Yeah.
the least amount of errors or mistakes within that space, but then they're the ones who apply that thing to more cases that are not needed. So
Yes, exactly.
you're not getting any effect on the procedure that you don't need.
Exactly. So
So
it's like it's like, casualties, like like unintended consequences, like,
Yes, yes, that's fascinating. So that is a really a really interesting point because in the beginning we start talking about how AI is going to take over a lot of things. We have this kind of like almost like a grim view of the future of how AI is going to transform things. And yet, when we apply AI in an existing system, we find these places. Well, maybe it's not the right technology, not the right company, or not the right use case, and so it comes into these challenges with the real world. And this is where, like to me, like it's kind of like we developed the combustion engine, and then we're trying to put it in like a horse cart, but you have to rebuild the whole thing from scratch, and the whole infrastructure has to be done. And for me, this is where I think AI is going to be much more beneficial than negative for workers, is that there's this period where we have to rebuild the whole infrastructure, to be able to use this engine of AI. And so you have to reimagine everything we do, not necessarily apply this AI on the way we're doing things, but reimagine how we do these things, from the ground up, to be able to leverage AI as a tool or as fuel. So if you have to like rethink or essentially review or kind of like imagine the future of a dental practice, if you will, what are those big changes and what needs to happen for us to really fulfill the promise of AI, if you will?
Yeah, I think I can look at it from different perspectives, from the perspective of a practice owner, or the perspective of society, or the perspective of, the patient, right? So I think,
well, think about it from the practice owner, because we're talking to the entrepreneur.
Right. So as a practice owner, I mean, really, my goal is to provide better outcomes for my patients at less cost, and hopefully enjoy what I do, right? So I think AI can perhaps do a lot of the mundane. Like, for example, insurance is a big problem for a lot of practices in the US, like 90% of them on some kind of a PPO plan, and PPO is just like, pulling teeth, no pun intended. It's like very hard to work with. Imagine if AI can go and make all that easy for you. Like,
Right.
Imagine if AI can, like for example, the same doctor I was going on a walk with, and one of the things he's experimenting with is, like, he's a lung specialist. So before they come in, there's a questionnaire he wants them to fill out. What if AI can call the patient ahead of time and through voice get all those questions answered?
Yeah.
So when they come in, it's all ready, versus, the patient comes in 20 minutes early, and
Yep.
some human has to sit there and give them a form, and then they enter it wrong, like all that nonsense, right?
Yeah, that'd
So
be amazing.
where can AI help? Like,
Yes.
do the things that it can do, that, like, the way one of the ways I like to think about it is a quote from, I think, one of the key people at Amazon. He said, we want AI and robots to do everything they can do as well, if not better than a human, period. I think that's the way I would look at it. Like, if AI can do it as well or better than a human, I would lean in. Like,
Yeah.
the reason is, why not? Like, at the end of the day, the only person I'm answerable to is me, the business owner, the entrepreneur. So if I can, get there in 2 steps versus 3 steps, why am I taking 3 steps, right? Like, I don't get a, hard work award. I get an outcomes award. So
Yeah.
I think that's the way I would look at it. But you got to be very, very careful, because this is the challenge with most business owners, is that they are not full-time into a lot of these technologies. So they don't think it through, like the example I gave you with the reception thing, right? Like, a lot
Yeah.
of people have eggs on their faces just because they say, oh, some companies say, oh, yeah, it's the best thing in the world, till sliced bread, and then you do it, and then patients are mad and, infuriated because they're just talking nonsense, or it doesn't give them what they want, right? So
Yeah.
I think you got to be careful. So don't, like, if I'm a business owner and I'm really busy, running my business, I would only implement things that I think are proven, just because I don't want to be the guinea pig, getting shot, right? But on the other hand, if you're an entrepreneur and you want to, like, create outcomes in 2 steps versus 3, because AI can do a lot of the work, I think it's a great time to be alive. Now, the challenge in healthcare is it's hard to get in, because, it's such a closed market. People don't want to try new things that are not, validated and vetted. So it's kind of like this cocoon. You have to, like, break into the cocoon, and it's not easy. So, but of course, other markets might be less, closed versus healthcare.
And are dentists open to trying new things? And then, are they open to, if they're failing, are they open to try again, with technology, or, once
No,
they
I mean,
get
my
burned, they're out?
experience working with healthcare people, they
Yeah.
don't want to try things, because they
They
feel
don't.
like the consequences are pretty terrible. Like, for example, when we were walking, we ran into another guy who happens to be a tech entrepreneur, very successful serial entrepreneur. And he was telling me about this other entrepreneur and, one of the technologies that they tried. And this started going into their practice management system and started reading all kinds of data.
Yeah.
And he's worried, what if we get sued?
Yeah.
Because it looked at some data it shouldn't be looking at.
Yeah.
Who's putting the guardrails? So because healthcare has been so guarded with all kinds of regulations and rules,
Yeah.
I think doctors are definitely afraid of like going out on a limb and trying something. I mean, I'm just talking just on the data side, but imagine if somebody dies or somebody gets hurt, like, who's to answer, right? Eventually they're going to blame the doctor. They're not going to blame the tech company. They're not going to blame the behind the scenes guy. They're going to say, you idiot doctor, it's your fault. And entire life, your entire reputation that was built by being good at what you do is gone. I mean, you are like a pariah now. So the cost to that human being who happens to be a doctor is humongous of failure. So I don't think, I'm being blunt and honest, I don't think they would play around with this kind of stuff unless it's really proven and really like solid. They won't do it. And that's one of the reasons I think healthcare moves the slowest of all the industries, just because the cost of failure is so high. Like most of the industries, you fail, no big deal. Nobody cares. Actually, in Silicon Valley, they'll pat you in the back and say, good job, fail again and try again, but that's not how healthcare works. And I understand why. It's just, you can't play around with people's lives.
Yeah, and it's more focused on safety because there's this legal industrial complex that's ready to take advantage, take their money with lawsuits. So it makes complete sense. Now, speaking of legal, you're starting to go into the legal space as well, right? And are those guys more willing to experiment with AI or not yet?
Yeah, so I mean, we talked about the societal impact of AI, right?
Yeah.
And I think it's already here. US economy grew 2% last year, 2.08.
Yeah.
Like, dismal, right?
Yeah.
I mean, that's below inflation, meaning the US economy shrank. And that growth came even with the AI or tech companies investing almost like 7% of the economy in data centers. So literally, the US economy is 7% smaller in terms of actual dollars transacted last year than year before, right? So I do think AI is already having an impact. In other words, if AI can do something for 1/3 the price, right? 1/3 the cost. So instead of 10 trillion, it's 3 trillion. What happens to the 7 trillion? It gets sucked out of the economy, meaning economy shrinks. So we are seeing it in jobs. Already, US grew the slowest in the last 20 years, 50,000 jobs a month. For a country with 300 million people, that is nothing. And the problem is, in the old days, people would say, I'm unemployed and whatnot. Now people are just giving up. They're like, forget it. Nothing is going to happen. Young kids coming out of universities, 25% of them are unemployed. They can't get a job. And this is happening today. Like, for example, you talked about law, and that's why I went on this tangent. Lawyers today are not hiring student interns or even young lawyers. They're hiring AI to do the research. So AI can do as better. Like, I remember sitting in a cafe and this woman who works for a hospital, and she goes, she was telling her buddy, like, there's this 100-page report that I used to read, and then I'm supposed to summarize it. Now I push it into AI, it summarizes it for me, and it takes 2 minutes. But supposedly I was supposed to have spent 8 hours doing it. Like, am I telling anybody? No, I just, I get it to do in 2 minutes, and I'm just, like, that's all I do the whole day, read that one report and summarize it. But anyways, like, provide some recommendations from it. So I think AI, I think it's starting to hurt the entry-level jobs. A lot of kids, imagine you're studying computer science today. 4 years ago, it was the hottest thing in the world, and so hard to get in, and getting into Stanford computer science is like impossible, right? It's like the hardest thing in the world. Today, like, my daughter studied computer science. Like, AI can do 95% of your work. So technically, if I'm a senior developer, I don't need a team lead. I don't need you anymore. I can just use AI to get 3 people like you, because AI is those 3 people. So I think it'll start hurting the younger generation the most. And I think it's kind of surprisingly, a lot of people thought the older generation might be the ones hurt most. They are not, because you need wisdom, you need experience. So when you combine AI with people who don't know what they don't know, that's a recipe for disaster. But the senior lawyer, the senior engineer with AI, he knows what's right and what's wrong and what's good and what's bad. They
Yeah.
become more valuable. So it's kind of everything that people expected to happen, which is it's going to hurt the low end. No, it's hurting the high end. It's going to hurt the older employees. No, it's hurting the younger employees. So it's kind of happening in reverse.
So I would love to have this conversation again with you in 5 years, because like literally I'm the opposite on all of it, all of it. Because I can tell you that Anthropic, who's actually creates the model, is hiring more computer programmers than ever. I can tell you that with AI, with Claude Code, the ability to code more, it's gonna generate more code. Like I think a lot of people that are looking at the world, they're looking at it as a fixed pie, and they think of like just the amount of code we've written, that's what we need, or the amount of code that we've written last year is what we need. They don't think that we're going to be writing 100x, 1000x more code. Every company can be able to customize their own code, and you will need more coders to actually see the architecture of the application, the design of the application, because these LLMs are not, like you were talking about earlier, you couldn't even, get a receptionist to answer the answer correctly. You need you need a human in the loop to observe and make sure that the design is done correctly. You also need a human to translate the other humans' need, into code. So you need that person that's going to be able to understand the process and convert it into applications and so forth. So and also we need the whole infrastructure of AI. So it's going to take like literally, I don't know, last time you built a WordPress site, but WordPress is a pain till today, and WordPress has been around for what, 30 years? It's still hard to build today. So I don't know. I'm not as I think we're going to need more code. I think we're going to need more coders. I think young people are going to have an advantage because they're able to learn faster and to be able, like today in your company, you probably can hire, you'd be happy to hire a young person who's smart at automation, who understands all the automation tools, who's a genius with code and N8N and all the tools. That would be a good hire for you. Like you can't have enough of those guys, wouldn't you?
I think things are changing. I think up until 7 months ago, I would have said those tech geeks valuable, but now you can talk to it in English and it can do that for you as long as you can explain what you want in English. I'm talking about today, some of the tools that I'm using personally.
Correct.
Like I can build a enterprise scale application, on the web that would have taken me 6 months in like 6 days. And I think the thing that we as humans are not ready for is, for the last 100 years since the Industrial Revolution, we went away from being farmers to this whole industry, right? And a lot of it, 2/3 of it, ended up becoming white collar, like sitting in front of a desk in front of a computer somewhere, right? And that's where the economy is. So, and 1/3 is blue collar. I think it's going to disrupt everything because. Again, I know this is a philosophical conversation, and I want us to be a GDP that is 100 times bigger or 10 times bigger for the world. I want it, but I just don't see that happening. I mean, classic example, right? You are paying for an enterprise software like Salesforce, let's say $100,000. Today, you can build something like Salesforce, at least the way you want it. Salesforce doesn't do what you want. You have to learn how to use it. It just is not very hard to use. For like over a couple of weeks, maybe 3 weeks, it won't be like the full sales. But you don't need the full sales. So you only need what you want to do. Now, what would you do? You may not build it. You might turn around and tell Salesforce, guys, either you're cutting your price in half or I'm just going to do it myself. What would the Salesforce engineer do or the salespeople do? They have two choices. Either say, okay, fine, I'll lose the entire business or I'll cut it in half. So this is going to start putting pressure on a lot of those IP knowledge-based economies, like especially software and SaaS and whatnot, where the prices would come down. If Salesforce is charging half of what it used to, that means it's going to make half the profits as it used to, or 1/3 of the profits, right? So I think there was an interesting article from one of the venture people. They said software companies should become services companies because services, at least you own the full.
Well, Salesforce
full value
is
chain.
already.
What I mean is like instead of like I sell you the software, I buy you the service company that buys my software, and I kind of optimize it with tech. So I can
Yeah.
now run it for half the cost versus you, right? I think humans will continue to look for ways to, I mean, this is capitalism, right? I mean, this is
Yeah.
the whole free market.
Let's
Like if
pick
I
a
can
let's
do it,
pick a couple companies that you think are gonna be down, and then let's review it in a year.
yeah,
So
I think,
Salesforce is one. So you think they're going down? I think they're going
yeah,
up. They're gonna be more profitable, and they're gonna have
yeah,
higher revenue. You're saying no, it's the opposite. Or
yeah. I
which
mean,
other
they're,
company would you pick?
yeah, I mean, Salesforce stock is down 50%. So
Well, no,
it,
stock is different than revenue and profitability. So that's just perception of stock is just the mood of the market. I'm
now I
thinking like the
understand.
actual company's
But I
revenue
mean,
and
but eventually the
profitability.
stock price has to gain back the half it lost and grow more for it to grow,
No,
right?
no. We're talking. Remember, we're talking about revenue. We're talking about GDP. We're talking about productivity. We're talking about like
I
the
understand. I
perception.
understand.
The perception of the market of it is different because there are a lot of stocks that were overvalued before, and then they just normalized. So
Okay.
if you think of revenue and profitability, I think Salesforce is going to grow. You're
Okay.
thinking it's going to go down,
I
regardless of
think it's going to
stock
go
price.
down.
Okay. But which
I
other
think a lot of
company?
SaaS companies will go down. The only ones who
Pick
wouldn't
one.
go down,
Pick one that's going to go down. Pick another one
uh,
that's going to
S-
go down.
HubSpot, Salesforce,
Keep going.
what is the one who makes Adobe? What's the name of the company?
Oh, Adobe, I think. Adobe.
Adobe. Oh, is it
Or
Adobe? Okay.
Intuit?
Okay.
Yeah. Adobe, I think. Adobe. So Adobe, you think is going to go down.
Yeah. I think the CEO
HubSpot. How
resigned. I
about
think,
how about QuickBooks? You think QuickBooks is going to be around?
yeah, I think a lot of the SaaS companies will go down. I think Google would do well. I think the robotics companies like
No, stay
Tesla
with
would
the
do well.
SaaS. Stay with the SaaS.
SaaS.
You think all SaaS is going to go down?
I think so. I mean, unless they have something so unique, like for example, if you are the stock, if you are the what do you call New York Stock Exchange and you own your own data, I think with
Yeah.
the minute you start owning your own data, I think you'll be okay. But if you
Yeah.
don't own your data and you are like using other people's data, I think you're going to be in trouble. Like if you're a hospital and you keep all your data, I think your value technically should go up because now you can do so much more with that data, than,
Yeah.
like before that you couldn't do before.
Okay. So all systems of records, SaaS companies are gonna struggle. Okay.
I think so.
Let's
I'm not
review it.
saying
Let's
I'm
review
not
it in
saying
a
100%, but I would say 80%, 90%. I'm sure some
okay.
guy is very creative and innovative, and he pivots and does everything right, and so I'm sure they will exist. But I think, in a general sense, I think most people will suffer.
Yeah. So yeah, I'll take the other bet. So definitely we'll review it next year, and then
Yes.
we'll keep reviewing it every year. It'll be fun.
Yeah, I think model companies would go up. I think a lot of the value are going to go into the model companies like Anthropic and stuff, you know. And I think that would cause a problem for governments. Like I think governments would want to control the models because they're like, if the model companies take a lot of the wealth away, then if we need to own it and distribute it to our people. I think economies like Switzerland would do better, meaning it's managed capitalism as opposed to free capitalism, where like
I
people are
think the
taken care of.
models. I think the models are gonna go public soon. I think OpenAI is probably gonna go public soon, and
Yeah,
we are gonna own it. Like so, as a shareholder, it's gonna be
right.
in our 401k. It's gonna be in all our so we are gonna grow with it. And I think the challenge what you're gonna find here's where I see a danger is that there are going to be maybe three, maybe five models, and two or three in the US, two or three in China, and then they're going to sell tokens all over the world. And the other countries that don't have the capability to build their own tokens, because tokens are going to be utilities, just like electricity. But electricity you have to make it locally. You could build it locally. But I think most countries around the world have to run the best model because if they don't have the best model, they're not going to be able to compete. And I think that's where the danger is that a lot of countries are going to be paying rent to countries like the US or China. They're going to have to pick a lane and they're going to pay rent to these to run all their everything on their models. And to me, that's the danger.
Yes, and I think I'm 99% sure those countries would say, no way, we are going to control it. So they would put rules and say, if you're, I'm just like if I'm India or if
Yeah.
I'm Europe, I will say I want the model to be European. I'll use some national security as the excuse, saying, well,
Yeah.
I don't want some foreign country controlling how our people live. And I
Yeah.
mean, that's the excuse everyone will use, and they will want. And the reason they will want it is because the very same reason you mentioned. If like I mean, if all of Europe is running on American models and all the wealth is going to America, and Europe is left with the scraps,
Yeah.
Europeans are not going to like it. They're like, why would we let all the value go to America when, you know what I mean? And same thing with
Yeah.
every single country. And I
Correct.
think what happened in the last year in tariffs and whatnot, I think has made everyone realize they're on their own. Like, nobody's going to take care of them. So they are going to do
Correct.
everything they are going to do. Like I'm saying, every single country, every
Yeah,
single.
but they don't have the capability. I mean, Europe is spending so much money on, I know, on social liabilities. They don't have any money to go do research, deep research, and spend in
I
like
mean,
China or the US.
it's not about deep research. It's about, how big your data center is and how much you can invest, right? So it's not like, oh, they have some IP. There's no real IP there. I mean, the guy who started is Jeffrey Hinton, and I think he wrote in like 140 lines of code. I mean, like the whole LLM. So it's not
Yeah.
like there's 3 million lines of code that only one guy knows. So I don't think there's IP there. I think it's just the bigger gets bigger. Like the guy with the $6 billion model is better than a $3 billion model. So
Yes.
whoever can create it. And I was having dinner with a friend of mine again, like, I don't know if you've heard of a company called Wattpad. He's the founder of that company. And he said, we also you don't need Anthropic for every problem. Like, for example, they
Correct.
bought something for $200, like the TPU for $200. And for basic image recognition, like, they have like a problem of like millions of receipts. That's all they need. And that runs
Yeah.
on a $200 machine. So I think what he's saying is eventually we'll get sophisticated. We'll be like, for certain applications, we need simple models, like
Yes.
something that's a $200 model and
Yes.
running open source. And I think
Yes.
what China is betting is that they want they're making everything open source.
Yeah.
They believe the open source eventually will win because, like once it becomes a standard, you own it, right? I
Well,
know
China wants to play the Android game, so they want to be the
exactly.
most used,
Most
operating
used,
tool,
exactly.
yeah, as opposed to
And
the Apple.
I haven't been to China, but I heard it's like so ahead. Like, for example, the robotics and,
Yes.
their technologies, even like the healthcare. Like I heard in China now, 80% of the doctor visits is done in a kiosk. So you
Yeah.
go and talk to a kiosk and it scans you and tells you like, and it of course, it doesn't work for 100%, but 80% still cuts down,
Yeah.
the volume significantly, right? So I think this is going to be an interesting time, like where, like we are fighting for our lives.
It's
But
gonna
I
be a
mean,
lot of fun. It's gonna be
yeah,
a
it's
lot
going
of
to be a lot
fun.
of
I
fun.
think,
Yeah, yeah.
especially for us and for our kids. I think us and our kids, we're gonna have a good time seeing the changes and be
Yeah.
able, hopefully, take advantage of this gold rush that's happening. I think there's gonna be a lot of picks and shovel businesses. There are a lot of opportunities for people who are willing to learn and be patient and be able to solve problems. I think
And
it's
I
gonna be
think,
a lot of opportunities.
yeah, and I think the other thing that's maybe a blessing in disguise is like if you take SaaS as an example, right? There's Salesforce and there's Salesforce, right? I'm talking about in their space. Now there'll be 100 Salesforce because anybody can build it. Like the thing that kept Salesforce big is it's so hard to build a Salesforce. It takes thousands of engineers who are very expensive and it's hard to get them. And only few people can afford to even go after that dream.
Yeah.
Now anybody can do that. So I think many of these industries will have hundreds of competitors, which means prices will come down, which is a good thing for consumers.
Yeah.
I mean, hopefully one good thing is a dollar will mean a lot more than it used to mean because
Yeah.
now we can get a lot more packed in. Only cost is metals and energy. Metal again is a fixed cost, and then energy for the compute. So energy is going to become a key. Like I know
Yes.
Canada wants to double its energy output in the next 20 years or something like that.
Smart.
So
Yeah.
like
They
I
probably
think
should
everyone will
double it
do that.
next year, not 20 years.
I know, but it's not easy when you're like
Yeah.
still
Well,
people are
Canada
moving.
has a lot of natural resources, which is good.
Yeah.
And they have the ability to do it. They just got to get their
Government
governance.
and all the red tapes and all the
Yeah.
nonsense, right?
Yeah.
I think that has been the curse of the West, right? A lot of
Yeah.
Western countries, our own red tape is what holds us back. It's just crazy, like just we put our own blocks in place and then say, oh, we can't move anywhere. Like,
Yes, yes, yes. Well, on that note, I appreciate you taking the time today. I really enjoyed our conversation, and I definitely want to do it again so we can check back in and see what those companies and what new things are happening in the dentistry and healthcare and the whole ecosystem.
thank you so much.
I
Appreciate it,
appreciate it.
Jay. Thank you.
Thank you.